Welcome to Moments in Time and Space, a microfiction podcast, bringing you tales of horror and suspense with your host, Aaron Maracle. Hello everyone. Dr. Brewster is a kind but quirky soul. He lives far from the village in a quaint little cabin. People are welcome to come and obtain his aid for free. He has been invited many times to take up residence in the village. Each time, he politely declines and says, "I'm happy to be among the Fireflies." Elizabeth placed the last of the kindling onto the small pile outside the cabin door, and brushed her hands off on the front of her gray frock. 3 weeks ago, she had been fortunate enough to find employment with Dr. Brewster. His services were highly sought after by people in the village, and he was only too happy to provide them to anyone who asked. The day was growing late, and Elizabeth knew she should have left an hour ago. There would be very little chance she would make the village before dark unless she ran like the wind. She had been torn about leaving on time or finishing the last of her duties. Elizabeth did not want to disappoint the good doctor. The door of the cabin opened, and Dr. Brewster stepped outside. He was an older man with broad shoulders and a jolly face. His wisps of white hair were brushed back close to his scalp and was always neatly trimmed. He spied Elizabeth near the kindling pile. "My dear, why are you still here? You should be home by now." "I wanted to make sure the chores were finished, Doctor," Elizabeth said. "I should be able to make it to the village before nightfall." "You'd only make it if you had 4 legs and a tail." Elizabeth giggled at the doctor's joke. "I will escort you home. It is the least I could do for all your dedication." "I don't want to inconvenience you, Doctor." "Nonsense. I'll feel much better knowing you got home safely." Without another word, Dr. Brewster ducked back into his cabin. After a few moments and some clattering, the doctor re-emerged carrying a lantern and wearing a large, thick black cloak. He offered his arm to Elizabeth, and she took it. The duo set off towards the forest, where the path to the village lay. The fading sunlight cast a pale orange glow over everything it touched. The forest faded from familiar to eerie, as the last rays of sunlight slid beneath the horizon. Elizabeth kept close to the doctor, and tried not to stare at the trees. Stories are told by the village elders of things that lived within the forest. Hungry, indescribable things, whose actions scared small children and made adults wary of the night. The stories echoed in her mind, and Elizabeth shivered at the creatures she imagined. She tried to focus on the light from the lantern, but her eyes kept wandering the dark places around them. She glanced at the doctor and saw a slight smile on his face as he confidently strode through the dark woods. He looked like he was enjoying himself. "Doctor, you know the stories people tell about the things in the woods?" Elizabeth asked. "I've heard them, my dear," Dr. Brewster replied. "Simple tales create an effort to entertain and explain the imagined mysteries of the woods." "You're not frightened?" "I only fear that which needs to be feared." The duo walked on deeper into the woods. Elizabeth heard a faint rustling, as if something was running across dry leaves. At first, the sound came from behind them, but soon it surrounded them. She peered into the darkness of the forest and thought she could see pairs of yellow eyes floating among the trees. Every time she attempted to look directly at the small glowing orbs, they vanished. "Doctor?" Elizabeth whispered. The doctor did not slow his stride. "I see them. They're nothing more than fireflies dancing with each other." The unseen things behind the yellow eyes began to make noises. Soft growls mixed with gurgling and the smacking of lips. Elizabeth dug her fingers on the doctor's arm, and the doctor stopped. He raised the lantern to his face and shone it over his features. The doctor slowly turned his head from side to side, gazing deep into the dark woods. Elizabeth looked up and gasped. Gone was the familiar look of kindness that made her heart feel at ease. In its place, the doctor wore a commanding look that dared anyone to challenge him. The light of the lantern cast deep shadows across his face that made the doctor almost look inhuman. The threatening sounds in the woods turned to mews and whimpers. There was a scampering of something unseen in the darkness, and the mewing slowly faded deeper into the woods. Silence fell, and the doctor shunned his lantern forward once more. "Come, my dear. We will not be molested any further," Dr. Brewster said, as he began to walk again. Elizabeth shivered and turned her gaze forward, avoiding looking at the doctor's face. What was making those sounds? "Fireflies, my dear. Just some fireflies." Do you still chase fireflies in the night? Thank you for listening. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. You can also follow me on Twitter at MomentsInTAS. Feel free to recommend this podcast to others and help it grow. The opening and closing theme is Creepy Night by Daniel Carlton. Until next time, be safe, be smart, and be well. See you soon.